Hello everyone, TviTournaments here, and today we'll be discussing Tournament 6, the Leftovers Tournament. Tournament is currently underway in our Discord server, and over there I made sure to analyse all the Pokémon teams as well as the statistics for each of them. So in today's video, we'll be discussing the teams, the trainer cards, as well as some strategies that the players could use. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What is the Leftovers Tournament? Well, I made a short not too long ago briefing the tournament, so I'd recommend watching that for a quick summary. But essentially, we're just using the leftover Pokemon that haven't been used in our tournaments yet. After 5 tournaments, you start seeing the same Pokemon, and with the release of Pokemon Home, we were able to implement that into our next tournament. Trainers were given a list of all the Pokemon yet to debut in our tournaments, and their job was to create a team using leftover Pokemon. So not only did trainers have to consider Pokemon Home Pokemon, they also had to go through bottom of the barrel choices to help their strategies out, meaning all the competitors will be going up against never before seen Pokemon used in these tournaments. But who are these trainers? We have Wizzy, 15 Lapo 9, Amadudus, Jay Sharona, Jigsaw, Kieran Johnson, Nico, Spidermark86, Samps, TVI Secretary Sarah, and me. In terms of their team's base stat total, we see Nico at the top with 3,275. But will the numbers be the determining factor for how good or bad a team is? And here we see the team with the highest HP, attack, defense, special defense, and speed. Shout out to Samps, who was able to claim 3 of the highest stats. The 2 most common typings were Ghost and Normal, which will become clear once we see each trainer card. But we can also look at the duplicate Pokemon, and you'll see that Basculegion and Ursaluna are sitting quite high with 5 and 3. Here's a list of some of the unchosen Pokemon. They had great potential, but trainers didn't choose them this time. And in terms of generations, we still have a way to go before every single Pokemon is used. Even though the Leftovers tournament was designed to debut Pokemon never before seen, we still have over 100 Pokemon yet to debut in TviTournaments. But enough of all that, you're here for the trainer cards. Before we dive in, consider subscribing to the channel. Whether you're a new viewer or hiding in the background, it would be awesome to see this channel grow. And if you comment down below, we may even see you in an upcoming tournament. So let's get into these teams, and let's see if we can predict a winner. We're going to start off with Wizzy's team, and offensively and defensively, it's looking really good. He's gone for a really physical offensive with Garchomp, and really specially offensive with Typhlosion. And the rest of the team is rounded out by some interesting choices in things like Toxapex and Oranguru. I can see Zoroark causing some issues with its illusion ability, and as long as you look out for ground, rock and dark types, you should be okay. I'm going to give Wizzy's team an 8 out of 10. I can't really fault it too much. Pokemon like Spidops and Toxapex are ones that I wouldn't use in doubles. But if you have a strategy that I'm overlooking, then I can't wait to see how it goes in our battle. The team itself is leaning more towards the support and utility side. I can definitely see you making use of status moves and switching out when it comes to it. And if you can make great use of Garchomp's attack and Typhlosion's special attack, then I can see you causing a lot of issues for your opponent. Next we move on to 15 Lapo 9. Offensively, you've got quite a few types in check, and considering that a lot of your Pokemon are powerhouses anyway, you're definitely going to be doing a lot of damage. While defensively, I can't help but notice your glaring weakness to fighting and ground. Even 2 of your heavy hitters are weak to water. You could argue that Ditto doesn't count because it will transform, and that Terastallization exists. But whatever Ditto transforms into will still have weaknesses, and Terastallization can always be countered. So overall, I'm going to rank it a 7.5 out of 10. It's hard to decide on an exact score, considering that Ditto could transform into literally anything. It could transform into something really aggressive, or it could transform into something that could support your team really well. But because I have no idea, I had to look at this team as if it was a team of 5. And as a team of 5, it's not doing too well defensively. Hisuian Arcanine has 2 quad weaknesses, and Lilligant's grass typing just gives it a whole bunch of weaknesses. Although it does have some great coverage. Besides their stab options, I know these Pokemon get access to a lot of different moves as well. Next we move on to Amadudus, and your team is looking really interesting. You've gone for the grass, fire and water trio that we see often in competitive, and the choices being Rillaboom, Delphox and Basculegion are really strong options. And then you've rounded it out with some physical and special options with Sneasler, Ampharos and Iron Jugulis. And your offensive coverage is brilliant too. If you slap on a ground and fairy type move on your Pokemon, then you've covered every single type. And defensively, you might have 3 weaknesses to ground, but you do have a flying type on your team to balance that out a little bit. Not to mention you do have a grass and water type to counter any ground types that come your way. So overall, I'm going to give your team an 8.5 out of 10. It looks like it will have great synergy, and I can definitely see some strategies going on with your Pokemon. You have a lot of really aggressive options that can do a lot of damage, and the amount of coverage that the Pokemon get will really keep your opponent guessing. You also have amazing utility as well. Rillaboom gets access to Grassy Surge, while Ampharos gets Thunder Wave and Delphox gets Will-O-Wisp. You could even set up Tailwind and Iron Jugulis if you really wanted to. Next up we have Jay Sharona, and damn is this an interesting team. Hand-picked with help from his mum, he's gone for your obvious choices with things like Ursaluna and Cleavor, while there are some more obscure options with Scovillain and Squawkabilly. With all your stab options considered, you have some great offensive coverage, while defensively, you're in a lot of trouble if you run into a water, ice, fighting or rock type. The team itself is looking quite balanced with a mix of physical and special attackers. I guess it'll all come down to which strategy you've chosen. So I'm going to give Jade Sharona an 8 out of 10 for a few reasons. To start off with, again, it's a really aggressive team. Even the unassuming Squawk ability can do a lot of damage if it has the Hustle ability. You also can't ignore the standard Ursaluna set that has Guts, Flame Orb and Facade. However, while your abilities help you out in terms of offense, you don't really have anything to support your team. Sap Sipper is the only thing I can think of on Goodra for Ursaluna, but everything else doesn't need to worry about a grass type hit. Moving on now, we have Jigsaw's team. He's gone for a team that has great offensive coverage as well as great defensive coverage. You're definitely covered if you come up against a multitude of different types. Just avoid those super effective hits, and I can see you using a bunch of strategies to overwhelm your opponent. I mean, you've got access to Trick Room, which can do really well for this slow team, but you can also switch it up and go really fast with Iron Moth and Cleavor. You might even want to play the slow game and set up Toxic or Toxic Spikes. That would pair really nicely with Cleavor's signature move, as well as Sandstorm from Hippowdon. I'm going to give Jigsaw an 8 out of 10 too. It doesn't look like the most aggressive team, but where it lacks in offense, it makes up in defense, as well as being really supportive with great utility options. Like I mentioned before, you can set up traps, you can set up Trick Room, and if all else fails, you have Basculegion and Iron Moth to get the remaining knockouts. We move on to Kieran Johnson now, and it's another team with a Ditto. This could either transform into something really good for his team, or it could transform into something utterly useless. Besides that though, offensively, you counter Ghost, Psychic and Ice really well. And on the defensive side, you only really need to worry about fairy types. You barely have any weaknesses, which makes switching around quite easy for you. And if you did want to do a lot of damage, then you have Hisuian Decidueye and Poltergeist. I'm going to give Kieran Johnson an 8 out of 10. Again, because there's a Ditto on the team, it's hard to tell exactly what score I should give it. It's a really bulky team with Umbreon and Spiritomb, and Stormjourner's defense is no laughing matter. Plus there's a lot of options with your support and utility. I can definitely see this team causing a lot of issues if set up correctly. Next up we have Nico's team, and it's looking terrifying. Barely any weaknesses on the defensive side. And where there are weaknesses, there's also resistances or immunities that you can switch into to cover for it. And on the offensive side, there's a lot of typings you're covering. Fighting is the only type you have to look out for, but if you can avoid that, then this team is going to be causing loads of issues for your opponents. You can set up Sandstorm for Garchomp, or if you lead Garchomp and Rotom, then you can spam Earthquake and Discharge. You can even have Hippowdon and Basculegion out to bait for a grass type attack, only to switch into Hisuian and Goodra to have Sap Sipper. There was a lot of thought put into this team, and the chemistry is outstanding. Nico's solid team is going to get a 9 out of 10. The more I think about it, the more I can't believe just how supportive it is. All of the Pokemon's abilities complement each other in some way, and not only do the typings do really well offensively and defensively, they allow you to switch out for either a resisted or an immune hit. And there's such great synergy with things like Earthquake Discharge, Sap Sipper helping out Hippowdon and Basculegion, or Muck using Power of Alchemy to claim another Pokemon's ability such as Levitate. So yeah, 9 out of 10, really well put together, and I can see this doing great in the tournament. So now we move on to Spider-Mark 86, and this team is definitely something to talk about. It's not doing too bad with the offensive coverage. However, there are some blank spaces, and this is due to the fact that he has 3 Psychic types and a normal type in his team. This is great to take on fighting and poison types, but not so much everything else. And then on the defensive side, because you have 3 Psychic types and a Ghost type, it means you double up on weaknesses. So while the team does look threatening with the likes of Perishong and Ursaluna causing chaos, if you get hit by a super effective move, or you make a poor switch in, then it's game over. So Spider-Mark 86, your team is going to get a 7.5 out of 10. On the surface, it's definitely not looking like one of your best teams. Offensively, it's only really Ursaluna and Basculegion putting in the work. Everything else looks like it'll be for support or utility. Speaking of utility, I can definitely see you using Perishong with Screamtail with Gothitelle. You also get redirection with Brute Bonnet, or you can set up a Trick Room with Grumpig. So only time will tell to see how great this team actually is. Samps is also bringing Ursaluna and Brute Bonnet. However, he's bringing even more physical firepower with Sir Titan, Hisuian Avalugg and Sneasler. Clowitzer is also an interesting choice for a special attacker. Offensively, with stab options considered, it's only really fighting type you don't have coverage for. That's pretty good considering you can also slap on some coverage moves for your Pokemon to count for everything. But unfortunately on the defensive side, it's not looking too good. 3 of your Pokemon have a quad weakness, and Clowitzer isn't known for its defensive bulk. You also have to really be careful for grass and fighting types. Ground, flying and steel are also an issue, so maybe you have a strategy to counter for those. Samps is going to get an 8 out of 10. The strategies I can see for this team are either setting up Snow, or using Brute Bonnet to put Pokemon to sleep, or redirecting while the rest of the team does the work. The team is really great offensively, putting in some really powerful hits. But in terms of how defensive the team is, you've got a lot of quad weaknesses, as well as Pokemon that will just die in 1 or 2 hits. However, your coverage is amazing. All these Pokemon get access to a lot of different moves. Sarah's next. I don't think teams get much more interesting than this. She's completely ignored using any Pokemon Home Pokemon, and her team looks like it relies heavily on defense rather than brute force. Offensively and defensively, it's looking pretty average. Nothing too dominant or passive. You've got a lot of immunities, and you have 2 Pokemon in your team that favour water type hits. Sarah's team is going to get an 8.5 out of 10. There definitely seems to be some interesting strategies being implemented with this team. For example, she has Palisand and Colossal, which both benefit from being hit by a water type attack. Or maybe Umbreon will stall a game out with its high defences. I can definitely see Terastallization be a key component of your strategy. but overall it's a fantastic, well-rounded team. It has incredible utility and support. I can definitely see a lot of these Pokemon getting access to a bunch of different moves. And then finally we move on to my team. All bias aside, it's definitely looking like more of a tactical team than an all-out aggressive team. Offensively, it's looking pretty decent, whereas on the defensive side, I've got to look out for ghost types. I can tell you now, this isn't the usual sort of team that I'd run. However, I thought I'd try something different for this tournament. If I had to rank my team, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. The strategies I'll be using are similar to the ones that I mentioned for previous teams. Whether or not I pull off this strategy is another thing entirely. Just know that while on paper it's not the most offensive team, it definitely makes up for it in the utility and support department. Gothitel's Shadow Tag ability could prove useful, and I can always set up grassy terrain with Rillaboom, so let's see how well I perform in this tournament. And here's my final verdict for all the teams. Nico sits at top with 9 out of 10, while 15 Pro 9 and Spidermark 86 sit at 7.5 out of 10. While the teams were amazing, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how aggressive they were, or how passive they were going to play out. Good luck to all the trainers taking part. I can't wait to see what strategies you will use against me. Analysing these teams were really fun, and some of the Pokemon choices were definitely ones that I wouldn't have even considered. So for now, that just about wraps up this video. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, train hard and team build to the best of your abilities, and I'll see you guys next time.